going to be a really difficult question. I can't answer it. So, do you feel the future, so I'm going to ask you, do you feel like the future of fantasy is going to be more of the Tolkien-esque epics? We still have those. We're still publishing them. I mean, Tor is known for those. Or do you see it more as fantasy as we come into the prime time with Game of Thrones and everything else, and all nerds are cool now? Like, is fantasy going to start blending more and more with the world and all these cross genres? Like, which do you feel the market is going towards at this point?
You know, I think there's two markets.
Yeah.
I think so. As an indie author, so I have a publishing company, and I set my timeline. I can move a lot quicker than traditional publishing can.
Yes.
So I'm much more aware of things that are cooking right now in the things that I write, because I won't write to market necessarily because I have to be passionate about what I'm writing, but I want to find the things that are hot that fit what I'm doing.
By the Venn diagram.
Yes, I need to find all the blending in the middle. But I think that there's definitely a market for epic forever and always. That's how I started, right? Like reading as a reader. But I think that the way epic is done, like, I don't think Tolkien would get a deal today. I don't think Wheel of Time would have made it through.
No.
You know?
Probably not.
So I think that the style of writing is never going to be what it once was in epic. Like, I love the David Eddings series on the Malorian and the Bulgaria. Those are my go-tos in epic. That's where I came. That was the blending of real paranormal with epic for me. And so David Eddings, like, somebody could write David Eddings today, but the style would be so different that it wouldn't necessarily be considered, I think, the same kind of thing. But so I think, and there's also a paranormal urban bent, but I think in paranormal and urban, the writing is shorter. It's even shorter than it used to be. So there's the market is shifting, I think, in length and what people have patience for. But I don't think the markets are changing. Sorry, is that too much?
No, please.
Could there be room for both your expectation to be right and yet an increasing expectation among readers that they can get their content almost in the Netflix model, where they're getting a season worth of books? Maybe they're shorter novels, maybe 80,000 words instead of 100, 150, 200,000, but then they release a novel, a month later, second novel comes out, and they're just gorging themselves on this first.
Well, and that's a marketing tactic. There's a whole thing called rapid release, and that's about playing the algorithms and getting noticed, and just like, as an author, discoverability is the problem, right? And so there's all kinds of issues. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so that's where it establishes like this notion of stuff.
Yeah, and discoverability is the problem. And so rapid release is a tactic to try to get books noticed, because once a book, if you write, like, one of my next series is going to be a witch that accidentally sells her soul to the sea witch. She's a pirate. And I won't release any of it until it's all done so that I can rapid release, because that's a tactic to kind of kickstart stuff so that the system sees you, and then it starts to serve me to people who, oh, you like this, you might like this. Like, we all get those notices from Amazon, and that's how you do it. So I don't know that that's necessarily a genre thing, it's a marketing thing.
I was thinking in terms of the audience isn't going to wait. They love a 300,000 word novel. I won't mention there's one that I absolutely love, and then we waited about 6 years, and the second one came out, and it's been about 8 years, and we never see it.
Where's George? Where's George R.R. with the last?
I was thinking of that.
Yeah. I mean, you're in the same boat, really.
Right. Well, and I'm not going to complain about that, but the market will pass you by. The readers will they want to read. They're going to find something.
But they'll come back when your next is out. I think if you hook a reader, you have a reader. I think that
Not always. I disagree.
Always.
Not always, because there are some series where the author took so long. I've wandered off and I have never gone back in 10 plus years.
And that's true.
So it's sad when it happens. So,
but I think it's all true.
I think that's where a lot of indie authors are eating trad, and I'm trad published. I think that's where the indie authors are really eating trad publishing lunch.
Yes.
Yeah, as a new author, it's very tough breaking into it. And even now, I don't know that I've really truly broken into it, but you'd be amazed at how many people would say, well, when's the third book coming out? Because what I've got is a trilogy. Mm-hmm. And the number of people that would say, well, I'm not going to buy anything until they're all done.
Don't do that. Because if you don't buy book 2, there will be no book 3.
It's so true. And you try to explain that to readers. It's like, I have a trilogy with book 3 was put on the back burner because it kind of stalled out. And it's like, well, if there isn't an audience, why am I going to spend 8 months producing something. You know, the money and the time and the energy and the heart that I could be working on something that I'm on fire for, you know, and the readers are on fire for. So it's a double-edged sword there. It's hard, and that goes back to your point, Luke, about passion. Like you have to have the passion.
You heard your passion, and then it's like, am I wrong?
Right.
And that spirals into
A whole new list of problems for the
Yeah.
writer. But just going in general from the whole perspective of fantasy, I think what our expectation of like a Tolkien fantasy is going to evolve and change. Because I mean, like everyone here has probably heard and or read of Dawn of Wonder, right? That's one of the biggest and newest books that I personally just loved, and I would say it's we're eagerly waiting for book 2. It took everything by storm when the book came out. It's doing fantastic on the audiobook side of things, and it's just a very accessible type of story that kind of I can't wait to see where it goes, right? And we also have the same story with Name of the Wind. We have the same story with even Brandon Sanderson's stuff of all his various series and stuff. But I think it's just the expectation of what it means to have that kind of epic fantasy and just that type of nuance is that we have more choices now. We have more choices in the style of story we want to read. And it's only going to get bigger as time goes on. So I mean, we're going to have multiple tokens in various segments of the fantasy world and writing styles.
I think you're right. I think that they're becoming deeper pools to draw from as a reader.
So I think we hit on something here, and I saw a couple hands come up. So if we want to take a quick break for some questions, I saw this one over here, and if anybody else has one, we'll get you. What was it?
There's also the newer, or starting to emerge medium of chapter release through Patreon that can keep, even if you're making a huge book, constantly coming out and your fans constantly reading it. And it keeps us engaged and probably ends up making the author more money than the standard release would be if they can keep people holding on for the whole release.
Yeah, to get patrons to support a Patreon. I have a lot of friends that are doing that.
Yeah. Well, I've seen it with original content. I haven't seen the serialized version. Like they'll add deleted scenes that an editor that's a monster cut it out, and then they'll give it to their patrons. I know.
Right, like the director's cut version.
Yeah, I know. R.F. Kuang was joking around about that with the Poppy War series about throwing in some of the sex scenes and some of the more the more romancy scenes for the epic fantasy series that she cut for the sake of epic fantasy.
Right, or there's authors that will write, like I have a friend who wrote a series that it was a 3 wishes kind of a thing where there's a genie and whatnot, and the genie is having all kinds of problems and drama because of the people that he's given the wishes to. Like, why do they always get all they want? And like, why is he so broken and bent out of shape about his job? Like, isn't he's a genie? And if you support the author, you get the genie story, which isn't long enough to publish really, and it's just a special cookie that you give to people who subscribe to you or like pay for your Patreon. So I think that there's opportunities to do stuff that you wouldn't be able to really sell.
You said you love Neverwhere.
I do.
Did you read the most recent edition where Gaiman was allowed to put in his novella about the Count getting his jacket back?
No, and I knew that it was happening, but I've been in the writing
amazing.
hole. Awesome.
There's also the novelettes that authors put out, where they're just little short stories. They're novelettes that tell you about a character that you liked in the original book, and it's between the between the series 1 and 2 or 2 and 3 or whatever. Or they'll go back and find a character and give a novelette and tell you a backstory or what happened to them.
Yeah.
Butcher's Reed doing that.
And Diana Gabaldon does that. She has like the Lord John Grey, and then she's got a book called Virgins, and like it's all little side pieces that solve the little problems in between, like the threads that never got answered.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess my question really is, do you think that we might be heading towards a author streaming service?
Like a subscription-based author service?
Yeah, what's the Kraut's thing?
Netflix for books has been a pipe dream for traditional publishing in New York for a long time, and we have not been able to make it work.
Well, and you know why? I think that it's the passion piece. It's the fact that I've got 4 kids and I run a nonprofit. I can't always reliably produce. And what if the fire goes out? Or what if I'm in chapter 8 that you've paid for and I send it to you real time and then I'm like, oh my God, the plot hole. You can't produce on demand all the time, and I think that's the only That's the scariest piece of doing something like that. Like, yeah, I'm gonna sign up and get all the patrons, and I'm gonna like everyone's gonna pay me, and I'm gonna produce a chapter a month. That's nothing. And then after chapter 3, I'm like, how am I gonna produce this?
How are you gonna pull like a David Weber? Because there's one time where his arc with Thane, you can buy arcs, and he sent out an arc to all of the advanced readers, and then rewrote the book entirely.
Different story.
And published an entirely different book.
Right, and that happens. Like, it's just, I don't know. I think it's too. I think writing as a business, as a writer, is too unreliable.
Get away with that shit.
Finished product is difficult.
So I'll say, as someone who has one of those patrons and does that exact model, yeah, it can be frustrating, and you have to figure out what your release schedule can be in terms of providing content that people will like. But again, I think it comes from that passion piece, because you can surround yourself with readers who are very passionate about your work and get them to invest in it. So I try to ask people to support me. Do you like where this is going? I can present them with choices and say, which one is more exciting for you? These three are all really exciting for me to write. Which one do all of you like? And then you can say, well, okay, they like these two, so maybe I can work them way in somehow. Or you just go back to the drawing board and they just say, look, you need to try harder. Then I try to do that, right? But that level of candidness is great, because you have a cross section of super readers.
Right, and then you get that one-on-one connection with your people. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
More a comment, but Kindle Unlimited is, as many problems as it has, it's still a thing. And a lot of people would write for that. There's the Patreon. I've read a lot in the superhero genre specifically that do the serialized one a month. And one of the authors I follow that did that, he, in the same time that he was releasing a chapter a month for his new superhero book, he released like 3 different books in completely different genres that he also wrote. And if you're that kind of writer, it seems like it works best for that. If you're that kind of blitz writer that just pumps out material. But yeah, it depends on the kind of writer you are.
Well, and it also depends on your pipeline. Like for me, I can produce like that, but can I edit and polish and format and get covers for that at that kind of rate?
Well, that's one of the things he said that he released when he released those chapters. He made clear to the top of every page when you got the new chapter. This is not the final chapter. It's going to be edited and it might change. And it did in several cases. And
hats off to him. I think as a writer, and connecting to your patrons, I think that's gold. If you can find a way to connect with a group of people who are that interested, then you're gonna feed that. But it's difficult. Like, it goes back to the whole discoverability thing, and that's one of the things that KU is really good at. And one of the things as an author, and I have books in KU, in order for a book to be in KU, it can be nowhere else. And so that's a double-edged sword as well, because how do you market and find an audience on iTunes? Kindle Unlimited. You pay $10 and you can get the library. And then we get paid on every page that's read. But at the same time, like, you limit yourself. You go narrow to go big, to go deep, but then you can't go elsewhere. And so there's all kind. I think that there's a group for everything. There's a lid for every pot, right?
Have you ever tried to withdraw a book from the KU program? How hard is it to do?
You have to ask. Easy. And be very nice. They're not trying to screw you. They're just trying to make the readers happy. It's all about the customer experience. So if there's 1,000 people who have borrowed my book and it's sitting on Kindles unread, they'll tell me we can't let you out because it's too many want.
So a couple more.
A lot of what we've been discussing seems really related to author branding. We shifted to this market model where, of course, authors are doing a lot of their own promotion. I was wondering if you think maybe the rise of having so much genre blending, these things like it's a fantasy and it's a heist, or sort of very aggressively labeling what tropes show up in your book is being a consequence of authors having to be more responsive to the market, because that feels like a limitation. It feels like a limitation of these authors.
Everybody hear that?
Having to label, or the fact that we're writing both?
I'm making part of the fact that most that use that branding, use that labeling, use that sort of like genre blend as its pitch seem to be more successful and writers in turn.
So I'm going to go to you at Tor. The professionals will tell you that you need to be able to give me the elevator pitch in a high concept. And high concept means it's Winona Earp with laser beams. Like, if I say that to you, you understand exactly what I'm telling you. that's why it's done, because I don't have to sit there and like give you the 45-minute, and then this happens, and but then that would have happened, but this is what happened, but then, like, you can't do it. So I think it's the more high concept you can get, the more relatable it becomes, the easier it is to sell. And I think that's why they're doing it. That's why I do it.
I mean, because I was called out.
Well, as an editor for tour, like the high
So
concept piece.
a lot of it is demand or a reflection of the market. So no matter how much I love a project and want to talk about it and geek out about it and be the cheerleader and a fanboy, when it comes down to me talking to the sales force who are then going to turn around and sell it to Barnes & Noble or the indies, I have to be pithy and I have to be entertaining and I have to get them to listen. So I will say things, whatever will work. Like, there's this beautiful novella that one of my coworkers, Roshi Shen, is doing for Tour.com, and it is a green man and a scientist, and it's this beautiful love story. It's a male-male romance, but it just happens to involve the green man. And I was like, oh, so it's gay Swamp Thing. And she's like, if you want to say it that way, because I was talking about it in the tour panel.
Does that get me an appointment?
Yeah. It's like, that's the most pithy, get your attention way to say that. And it works.
I think because it's effective, and I mean, think about it, as a reader, as a person, you're on your phone looking at Instagram, you're on your Netflix looking at the screen, like we have to catch you like that. And so if I can get you in a sentence with like 5 words, I think that's why, and I don't think it's a limitation. I think that, if you have a book like Neverwhere, or Outlander, who's familiar with Outlander, right? Who's not familiar with Outlander? Romance, bodice ripper, time travel, sci-fi, sword and sorcery, betrayal, revenge, like it's got everything. So
Escapes.
And if I'm trying to serve the romance piece, I'm going to talk about the romance and like the kilts and the bodice rippers. And then if I'm talking about sci-fi time travel, I'm going to appeal to the Highlander crowd. Like, so there's a different way to market the same thing, and I think the more you know you market, the better, the more effective you'll be at it. And I think that's where the quick the 3 words mishmash comes from, because it isn't necessarily that I'm trying to write the green man meets whatever. It's that if I tell you that that's what it is, you get some of it. Did that answer your question?
I've noticed this recently, especially with like Gideon the Ninth and Unspoken Name, which are 2 books. One is already out, and the other is coming up. Everybody should read them because I'm going to be a publisher now. No, they started using AO3 tags to promote them. And it's been incredibly effective. AO3 is Archive of Our Own. It's a fan fiction website, and they tag their stories with Angry Dad, or Friends to Lovers, stuff like that.
Right, that they use the tropes.
Yeah,
like the Mountain Man Baby Daddy.
They speak almost exclusively in trope.
Yes.
And it's incredibly effective.
Yeah. Well, and that's also the metadata. Like, that's how people are searching for things. And so when you look at, there's a bunch of software that authors, indie authors in particular, use to try to find the keywords to hook up with my story when I'm putting it in as a publisher. And it's all that stuff.
Yes.
Like, it's what are people searching for? What are people talking about? Where's the buzz? What's trending? And look at those. And if those things fit, then I'm going to claim one of them as mine.
Gotta learn their lead speak.
And then you had a question.
My question actually takes you away from publishing.
Oh.
So, having the particular road trips and heists, having magic in your world totally changes how you do it. So if you can teleport, or if you cannot teleport, all those rules in your world change how those stories can be told. Do you find that you set all the rules, or that you need a challenge and you go back and you modify your rules?
Did everybody get that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Whoever wants to take the lead.
So there's lots of rules about how to make magic systems. One of the most important ones is cost. What does it cost to do it? How does it affect the character?
Right.
And that often imposes limitations.
Microphone and water at the same time.
Oh, that? Yes.
Legs in the air, ungrounded. So the usual heist limitations, I'm worried about interference from the cops, or I'm worried about disloyalty from within my group that's gonna, someone's gonna rip off the rip-offers. You have to integrate the magic rule system. And the thing is that, at least for me, if it's not consistent, it breaks the story for me. Whatever the rules are that you've set, and you set expectation amongst your readers, you gotta follow them. Thank you.
Yeah, well, and I have a situation in a series where I like had this great idea about this witch who can see ghosts, and when the ghosts arrive, it's not just a ghost that's appearing and the house is haunted. It's somebody in the vicinity has died, and she gets to see their death story. And if that's the happening, like, how is that a mystery? Like, how are we going to do that? And if she's psychic and a cop, well, there has to be some kind of limitation. Like, so my ghosts can't talk, and it's all pantomime, and she only has a minute, like, we don't get the whole story, but there's enough. So I think that you build the rule to add the limitation, because you can't have an omnipotent, there's no mystery if there's no mystery, right? So you have to kind of build the rule.
I absolutely concur. The rules can't take away the challenge. They've got to support that challenge. And
cause the challenge, maybe, even cause the challenge.
And sometimes cause. But absolutely, you must be consistent throughout. If you're going to change, there's got to be some incredible, compelling reason to change a rule. That's hard to sell, too.
Well, it's easy to do in fantasy, though. They found the talisman that lets them unlock the something, and now they can do this.
Yeah. But as far as limitations and whatnot else, I've got a high fantasy trilogy. We start off with an investigation that turns into a road trip that ultimately turns into a fight to save the kingdom. We've got ghosts, we've got escapes, we've got lots and lots of fights, we've got monsters, dragons, you name it. So there's lots of these little elements that blend in, and it's not that we're taking an individual trope and trying to make our story fit a trope. We're taking slices of tropes to fit our plot.
Yes. Well said.
Was there anything else? Questions? Any questions about road trips, heists, and genre, or just writing in general? Because we have 4 experts. Sorry.
Who's he cutting out?
4 experts. All about it. So, yeah.
Say that again? Tired of seeing in road trips and heists? I'm gonna be a jerk and say I'm really tired of like the ensemble cast of 15 people and everyone's an expert at something and it's like slapsticky, snarky. That annoys me because it's not real. Like if you're dealing with something where you got to get the diamond heist figured out and whatever, like it's serious. Like it could be funny. You could have the Royale with cheese conversation in the down moments, but the 100% snarky.
So not an Oceans fan.
I can watch Oceans once and then not watch. Like I couldn't read a series of Oceans, but it's good when it's in moderation. I guess for me, I'm tired of this snarky.
I think it comes back down to have a compelling character. They've got to have a set of skills, but they have to be challenged. They can't just waltz through everything. Somebody was describing the difference between poetry, short stories, and novels in a previous panel, and I'm drawing a blank on who it was that actually said it. The comparison was that poetry was kind of like the formal part of ice skating.
Patricia Briggs.
The free form was your short stories, and then a hockey game was a novel where you're leaving blood and teeth on the ice, but you get to the goal. And I love that analogy, and I wish I could remember who it was that said it. But that's really what it gets to.
Patricia Briggs.
Patricia Briggs.
Thank you, Patricia Briggs. But you take your character through hell to make a good story. And so they can't waltz through. They've got to crawl through at the end.
Anybody else? Any other questions?
If you look at something like the Lies of Locke Memorial, what do you think about the ice tropes that
Everybody hear that?
No.
It was a question about Lies of Lamora and why it worked as a heist novel.
Did you agree that it is a heist?
Oh, wait, does anyone disagree that it's not a heist novel?
I haven't read it.
I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, wait, am I the only one that's read it?
No, I read it.
Okay.
Luke said
So for the left table.
So I'll say yes, it is. But I would almost say that the concept of what the heist is almost different in each book, because I'm struggling to remember the first book, and I don't. I'll vaguely mention that the third book revolves around the election, right? So I mean, the way that they've built the characters, the way that they've organized the characters, these are they fit the stereotypical role of what you would expect as con artists, as thieves, as more of an intellectual approach of how it would exist in a fantasy world. So I would say absolutely, it would make that kind of genre fit. But I think what its strength is that it doesn't end up being the same story loop. So it is a heist. It is that kind of criminal stealing something and making off with it. But the story loop isn't the same. So I mean, it has the same element of the story loop, but it is not the same story over and over again.
My take on Locke Lamora, especially the first one, it's a heist novel. He's the quintessential Danny Ocean. He's built on charisma and positive thinking. And the entire book is about beating him to hell and back and him just trying to survive. And it's not really so much a heist or ripping off a bad guy. They're bad guys. His whole crew are just not great people. They steal for a living. But the book is about them having to steal for survival, as opposed to steal because you just want to dick over some rich guy. And I think that's where they take and are able to twist it. And there's also true name magic and all the fun stuff. And then there was one more.
It was just going to be a comment. Because I heard about Delirium and it sounded awesome. The first book's up for free.
Oh, the first book or the first season? The first season of Susan K. Quinn's Delirium series is free right now on Amazon or everywhere?
Amazon.
We got about 3 more minutes, and I wanted to give everybody a chance to talk about any projects you're currently working on and selling, and people can read you if they like what you said today. So starting at the end of the table.
Well, my current trilogy, which I'm one of 3 authors, co-authored it with 2 buddies. We just put our 3rd book out, and I'm currently working on a companion novel that will explore the background of a couple of the characters that are introduced in the middle book that reinforce the main heroes and travel throughout the 3rd book. It'll start before this one and end after the 3rd book, so it bridges completely over, and I'm already working on a sequel to that. If you haven't read them, then you won't know what the Wind Riders are, but they're an organization of elite soldiers for one of the kingdoms in our world, and it centers around a couple of those characters. And then I've started on a science fiction novel as well. It's near, I guess, modern day, near time, first contact kind of thing.
And what was the name of that series?
The one that I'm...
The one that you're currently out, that you're working on with 3 friends?
The Cain trilogy. Son of Cain is the first book. City of Cain is the second, and Blood of Cain is the third. Yeah, like I said, we're new to the scene, but having a lot of fun with it.
I'm working on the 3rd book in my long-awaited final installation of my trilogy. It's a sword and sorcery, coming of age, not epic fantasy. And after that, I have a pirate who accidentally sells her soul to the Sea Witch trilogy coming out. And I'm over at Bard's Tower at the America's Mart selling the stuff that I've got here. But I'm always doing witches. Witches are my thing.
The second novel just came out in July, River of Night, post of pot, and it's got a road trip from HE double hockey sticks in it. So I just currently put out my new epic fantasy series with my co-writer Bryce over there. This is it's called The Mark of Kings, part of the Shattered Rain series. It's been out since May. If you're looking for a kind of a traditional journey fantasy, this is really what you'd love to take a look at. I'm sure you'd love it. There are dragons, all the words you'd like to hear. And then as part of the other side project I have is my Ascend Online series, which is the Lit RPG kind of gaming elements book. So I'm currently working on book 4 of that series. Really hoping to have it out by the end of the year. And once I'm done that, I'm going to be dipping my toes into some science fiction. I'm going to try to do a science fiction lit RPG kind of game. I'm super excited to do that. And we're also going to be doing book 2 of Mark Kings, and hopefully have that out sometime in the first half of the year. First half? No, Bryce says maybe.
We're talking about rapid release. We have a meeting the other day, and he's like, yeah, 3 and 6 months.
The other series after that in 2021. If you want to
Get out.
We're going to keep working hard.
I want to thank my panelists and have a great con. Thank you.